Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio. Lizzie Burgess from backyardbanshee.com offers a range of resources, tools, and services that support our community's spiritual and professional growth, utilizing divination as the process. Lizzie has been published in witchcraft magazines and lifestyle blogs around the world, and her next book, An A to Z of Modern Divination, is out at the end of 2022. You can find more professional resources at her website, backyardbanshee.com/bosswitch. Lizzie Burgess, welcome to WitchLit.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
I'm excited to have you on. And we, as listeners know, there's always some pre-chat that they don't get to hear. But
Right.
it's nice to have someone on who's primarily been a blogger, but you do have a book coming out. And so I'm excited to kind of talk about that different angle with you. So our first question for everybody on the show is, why write?
Oof, I love writing, from birth, knows in a good book, even to now, running a business, 2 small children, and I'm trying to get through at least 3 books a week at the moment. It's a struggle, but it's a passion, and I'll follow it to the grave. So I think writing must have just naturally progressed from that. I mean, I have quite a lot in my own astrological chart, third house placements, even my Vesta, which is an asteroid that you can look at for inner fire and passion and creativity. It's conjunct with my midheaven. So I'm going to find a way to be creative in my professional life. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just an absolute joy. I love to share knowledge. I love to be the eternal student. So that is definitely why I'm involved with a bit of writing now.
Yeah. I'm so impressed that you're managing to get through 3 books a week and raising children. So what kind of stuff do you like to read?
So I mix it up. I'm currently reading the Robert Graves White Goddess. Mm-hmm. I'm reading Madeline Miller's A Song for Achilles. I've already managed to fit in a couple of smaller ones like Galate. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. That was a recent one that came out. So that was last week. So this week it finally is A Song for Achilles, because it's taken me forever to get around to it. That to be read pile is always stacking up further and further. So, yes. So I finally got in there. And as well as that one, Robert Graves, I'm reading Simon Bright's divination book. As part of my research for my own book. So yeah, always got something on the go. And all 3 books, so far, I'm loving. I thoroughly recommend. I don't know about the authors and their lives and such as much, but the storytelling and, the references that are happening, that I think it's fantastically researched across the board. So yeah, I'm happy. Yeah. I don't know how I find the time. Maybe it's I don't know, borderline delirium at this point, but it is honestly a joy. I love it. So yeah.
Yeah. I haven't read White Goddess. It's on my eternal TBR list of things I should have already read, as a witch, but I haven't gotten to it. I do. One of my favorite books though is he also wrote this book called The Long Weekend. That is basically about Britain between the wars. It's just because he's a historian, right? So, I mean, there is this book about Britain between the wars, and it's one of my favorite books because it's these weird, snapshots almost. I don't really know how to describe it. It's very short essays about all these different aspects of British culture. So as a writer, it's been really helpful for research when I have scenes or characters or something that, are kind of fed by that period in history. And it's a different way to kind of approach history that I really like. So yeah, I think he's an interesting writer. Like you said, I don't know that much about him personally. I'm not going to go read everything Robert Graves read, because maybe he's a terrible person.
But, yeah, maybe they're problematic. I'm not sure, but yeah,
exactly.
We're okay. Yeah,
yeah. I don't think he's getting our money.
Been to Britain?
I have.
I'm so sorry.
I've had the opportunity to go a couple times. I went gosh, when was the first time? My son was like 8 or 9 and he's 27 now. So it's been a hot minute. The first time I went and was just in London that time for like 5 days. My husband was there on business and his boss basically paid for my son and I to join him for a few days. And then,
that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was the first time I'd been, and, it was one of those trips, I think, for my son that, most people don't get to travel overseas when they're that young, especially Americans, just because it's so expensive to, travel that far. But we had a great time and we did stuff in London we probably wouldn't have done because we had him with us. We went to like the Natural History Museum, which we probably would have done on our own, and some other stuff. So we had a good time. And then my husband and I went back in 2012 after the Olympics and stayed for like 2 weeks and got to explore a little bit more. We went, we mostly stayed in London, but we went to Bath and Stonehenge one day on a little excursion. Okay. And then we also went up to see friends in Glasgow. We flew up on like a horrible, tiny, like basically bus with wings flight to Glasgow. Spent the weekend. But I would love to go back and explore more. I feel like I've only scratched the surface. So,
I mean, what I was going to say is like the people in Britain, we have, this perception across the world of like British people and how they behave and things, and I can assure you that is not who we are. Like there is nothing so sweet and polite about a lot of them. You get some real caricatures of people everywhere you go. I love that you went from like London to Glasgow and missed out everything in between.
Yes, that was the downside of flying. We had wanted to take the train, but found out that it was a lot more expensive than flying. So we wound up in a cheap puddle jumper flight. But I would like to go back and just kind of do, a lazy trip around the UK, but between COVID and just how crazy travel is right now, who knows when that will happen, but hopefully soon.
I hope you get to traveling soon. Like travel is amazing. It changes people, doesn't it? Like that's one of the things I find that people who love divination also love travel. Like I think it's the whole exploring different cultures and trying to understand things that, maybe a little bit obscure to us. We all love to learn new things. They kind of go hand in hand, I feel. I see it.
And I think what you said about being a perpetual student also plays into it, because it is, what better classroom than to go see the place,
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, that is 100%
it. So I'm curious, like, how did you, I guess, kind of get us back onto writing in this podcast, although I could talk and travel all day. What was the like impetus for your business and your blog and kind of getting basically to help people running, witchy businesses to be better business people using, the tools that are also part of our practice?
Ooh, lovely question. So I have been that kind of person who left school at 16, immediately worked really hard, got into management. And, I was managing big teams, 18, 19 years old. You can imagine the types of men who love to deal with me. These like 40-year-old, like white men with strong opinions, and me all tattooed, bright blue hair, like 19, like, so we're going to be looking at Jungian archetypes, like getting into a whole thing to manage teams better. But so I've always been invested in people's development through that sense and working with people because we've experienced it ourselves. Like I've experienced it, working with managers that don't get you and don't like focus on your development with you. There was no tools available to do so. Over the years, I came across a few people who completely changed my journey and really, really helped me. And my background overall is in event management, hospitality, and retail management. The key focus throughout all of that for me has been community, and it's been about helping each other. Like my last event manager role that I had, I was working for a UK retailer, and we were looking at the best ways we could create community in the community. Things like rundown villages and towns, we would rent out like a village hall and put on like a Mother's Day event for the whole town to come to for free. The whole village could come for free, and the food and drinks and everything was taken care of. And we had like I made sure that there was face painters there for children and like balloon artists and stuff like that. Like just really trying to create something really lovely. And there was nothing. It sounds so weird. It does sound like it is like its own marketing strategy, but it was really about like establishing community and knowing that you always had this retailer there. And that was my role, was to help articulate that for the brand. So that was really exciting. And then I had my Saturn return. I was in the midst of setting up my own event management company. I didn't know it at the time. Like there was like a few days between like me finding out, but I was actually pregnant with my second daughter. And I was having my Saturn return like around this period. And like I have an email that I'd sent to some investors where I said like, basically, look, I can't do this. I'm feeling really off with running event management moving forward. I feel like I need to be coming at it at a more holistic angle. I'll come back to you in the future. Like now I can't meet today. I'm poorly. I'm sick. I can't come. And so when I was on bed rest, like I was getting more into tarot and then reading for friends, because there's not much more you can do when you're on bed rest. Read tarot and rest where you can. Yeah. So I was passing on to friends who then were telling their friends, and it just organically kind of came around that way. Like it was supposed to be like a small little something, and instead it turned into like a full-time career pretty quickly. So I've been doing this since the beginning of the pandemic. And yeah, like not many businesses survived their first year. So I was really proud of that achievement. But in terms of accomplishments, I've held like incredible community online events during the pandemic. I've helped so many businesses with creating campaigns that actually suit them and help them. And I have really strong values. Like I'm one of those people that like doesn't love capitalism very much. So if I can make things like cheaper, if I can make things more accessible to folks, such as like I have friends with chronic illnesses, myself, I'm neurodivergent. So like sometimes the energy is just not there. And, witches, we're not all out of the broom closet. So I knew with Backyard Banshee, I wanted this to be a space that like it should be affordable. It should be like a safer space, not necessarily a safe space, but, for those in the broom closet, I want to be able to offer low-key solutions for them that, kept that feeling of safety for them. And of course, I want to respect everybody's energy. If people are too tired or have a migraine and can't show up to a call, we'll navigate that and change it around another way. Yeah. So writing is a great way to be meeting all that criteria. Yeah. So that's why I write as much as I do and offer so many like resources to help small business owners, spiritual folks, witches. You're my people, right? Like you're you're who I love and adore, and you're my community. So I want to kind of give back to that. And even with my own like tarot readings, a lot of the same stuff kept coming up for small business owners. And that's why I wrote Ascertain with Astrology, because it's cheaper and it has all the same answers, and you can go at it at your own pace. Like you don't have to do it all in one session, which is like an hour and a half, 2 hour Zoom phone call, or like a half day meet and greet in person thing, So I thought like this is going to be a really great, useful tool that will be there for people whenever they need them. That was my main drive, really.
Yeah. For listeners, Lizzie sent me the Ascertain with Astrology workbook, so I worked through it. Like, I used my natal chart for me rather than my business chart, because who knows when, the podcast actually was born or when my writing career was actually born. So, but it was a really interesting way to look at, I mean, and we talked about this a little bit before too, like most people I know who are writers, especially, hate marketing. I mean, it's just like trying to, either it's how do I not sell my soul to capitalism? How do I find the energy, the creative energy to market in addition to trying to find the creative energy, right? And to do all the things you need to do that. So I think especially, independent and small press published people, which is, fiction authors, whoever, like you have to be a marketer and a writer if you want people to read your work. And it's not necessarily as much about sales, although, yes, the money is great. And when we all love to be able to, live on what we make as a writer, but just to get eyeballs to your work, you have to be a marketer. And I think it's difficult. And, as a creative person, even if you're not neurodivergent or, not dealing with, some kind of chronic illness, like you still only have so much energy to tap, especially, in a world where we're dealing with pandemics and climate change and all that stuff. It's really hard to go, oh, do I really want to spend 20 minutes and create an ad? So what kind of advice do you give to creatives, especially who are like, this is part of your job?
Right. So with Ascertain, with astrology, we literally look at, like how you mentioned, your own natal chart, but you can do a discovery chart for the date that your business started. And we look at each planetary's like personality archetypes in that way, such as Mercury. We convert that to like a business communication and tone of voice. Right. So you can look at your placement and it can give you guidance on how to communicate things. It can even give you a little bit of guidance into like color tones as well. If you have to jump into the world of social media, which we all unfortunately kind of do in this world. You see, because for me, that's one of my biggest struggles. Like I am a super creative person. I have a ton of ideas, but I can't actually, I can't create like graphics and art in that way. My way is more about the writing, the reading, the random poetry at like 3 a.m. to like people that I absolutely adore, and I just have to gush and tell them like straight away. And speaking of that as well, like your Venus placement, that's like your business love languages and how you engage with your community and the people who support you and how you can give back as well. That can help with things like discounts and can help with things like promotions or giveaways. It can cover things like how you can offer little gestures, like here's a free sample of my next book, really lovely moments that you can share. Yeah. The whole point of me writing this wasn't to direct people in how it should be done. It's more about inspiring you to interpret your chart or your business's chart, the day you set up your blog, like all of these things is to inspire you to take that in a new direction that can help you feel like reinvigorated and just explore something, and to hopefully help you fall in love with your business a little bit more. Because if I could leave you better than I found you, like that is pure sugar to me. Like I love that. It always makes me really, really happy. I love my Scorpio placements too, and I love to work in the shadows. So I'm quite happy, like, to let other people take the credit and things like that, because I want to see other people succeed. I am invested in you doing well. So yeah, if anybody's listening to this and they read the workbook and they're just like, I don't get this, ask me.
Yeah.
Like come and chat with me. Like I offer free consults and things like that. So just ask away, like, what do you mean by this? I'd love to get into a discussion with you that could hopefully, like I say, help you feel invigorated and want to move forward, like with a little bit more inspiration. I don't want people feeling burnt out on my watch. So,
yeah. One of the things I really liked about kind of the approach in the workbook is, I mean, I know enough about astrology to be dangerous. It is not my area of expertise. I always rely on professionals for those kind of things. But the one thing I did notice about it is like a lot of kind of like, boss witch kind of stuff I've read about astrology is really focused on the, the houses and the placements that specifically have to do with business and money. And you really concentrate more, it feels like, or you direct the energy of this workbook and the exercise of it to kind of like what you said about falling in love with your business. Like, why are you doing this? Like, what if it's, if it is just money, I guess that's one thing. But I feel like a lot of people who step out to create businesses around magical practices and witchcraft, yes, money is a factor to some extent because we do all have to eat, but
exactly.
It's usually not the reason people throw out their shingle. It's not the main reason. And so I think focusing on those things really just kind of turns that whole thing of, why are you having to market yourself on its head a little bit? And it was just really nice to go, oh yeah, maybe I could totally think about this a different way.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. But it's true. Like, with businesses, normally you'd look at, for example, you mentioned like houses, and it'd be like the second house, the 10th house, the 6th house. And no, that's not where I focus, In private tarot sessions, I actually focus on just to like drown us both in information. I focus on 28 points of astrology, and it's not what you think. I mean, that's one of my like things about divination. I love the obscure. I love the different perspective. I like to look at things a little bit weird. I like to change it up. So yeah, I find that really, really fun. I'm glad that you were able to take something really positive from it. Thank you.
Okay. So since you brought up divination again and the obscure, I'd love to talk a little bit about the book you're working on that I got a sneak peek of. So the A to Z to modern divination, the part I got to read, and I'm just kind of giving listeners a little overview. I can't spoil it because I didn't get to see the whole book, but kind of a compendium of, or even like I don't know what the word I want to, it's almost like a glossary in a way of like all of these different kind of ways to do divination, historical terms, how, what they are and how you might use them in a modern context. Although I'm sure people, when you get to the part about like bull intestines and stuff, that might be difficult to pull into modern, modern context.
I've completely got that. Like, I was like, people always, I've got that in there. Don't worry. I've got my like weed lovers, sex lovers. I've got my vegans, my pagan parents. I've got you covered. Like, this is the modern world now. Like we've got to step away from taking things like that. So I don't want to spoil.
I want people to read it. So I don't want to give all the information away.
Specifically that one, but yes, trust me, I got you. All you vegan fans. Like, unfortunately, I'm not vegan. I eat less meat and dairy completely, but it's not completely out of my diet yet. But like, we don't have to be perfect. We just have to try. Like that's, everybody has to do a bit. That's all. Yeah. So
I try to remind myself that it isn't that everyone on the planet is living 100% vegan and zero waste. It's that we're all doing better than we've been doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And mostly people in wealthy Western countries. We are the ones who really need to work on that.
I'm saying nothing. I'm not getting political.
Yeah.
It's
that's okay. We do. Yes. I mean, I understand that the reasons not to go there, but we do get a little political here sometimes.
Oh yeah. No, we should. It's more for me. I will continue talking and we won't talk about writing.
Gotcha. I get that. So I would imagine that this has been interesting research. So what does that kind of look like for you doing the research for the divination book?
It's been, again, like that whole pure sugar high vibe. It's it's been such a joy, honestly. Like it's fascinating to say the least. Like reading so much about like the ancient Egyptians, like even the Romans, but like even things that they did in like medieval Britain has been like interesting. I came up with the book, I suppose, with the fact that I was like, there needs to be more information on this. And then I was very much like, all of my notes that I'm making about this is filling my desk and I'm not focusing on anything else. Like it's kind of spiraled and hydrated itself. It's every time like I deep dive onto one thing, it just brings up so much more. But it's also been amazing for my own personal journey. Like, I don't want to spoil things from the book, but there's a particular type of divination in the book that has changed the way that I view divination as well. As a secular witch, sod it, I'll spoil. So it's called, I'll spill the tea. So it's a divination method called thumomancy, and it's to do with the divination of the soul, right? So it's very much like, what is a soul? And like, how can a secular witch even utilize something like that? And in the book, I talk about, obviously, like astrology, like there are ways you can look into it that way, but it's the things from like Irish folklore about like how people used to crochet like holes, so that when you were crocheting, like people used to think that you were crocheting your soul into the work and leaving the holes in the patterns of the art they were creating, let your soul escape. The African, I can't pronounce the name. There's an African tribe that begins with a T. I wrote it down in my book though. But if they used to believe that yawning was a soul escaping. So I thought that was really interesting, how they'd have like mini rituals for that. And just generally how people talk about a soul and like what it means to them. I mean, from my own perspective, it's really made me look at science, the science aspects of it a lot more with the research and things. And my overview of it is that it's something that we definitely have, we just don't understand yet. Just like we definitely had lungs and we definitely had a liver and we definitely had a heart, and we always have it. We don't always know that we're like we're not always conscious of it now, but even before now it was here. And before medicine, nobody really knew about it, so it's going to take a long time in the future for us to really see what it is. From a science perspective, it's looking like it's like what a conscience is. So like psychology heavy, like it's really, really fascinating. And there is a difference between soul and spirit. Like spirit is more to do with the religious aspects, whereas soul is something that is a little bit more self-centered, I guess. But that's not like a negative thing. It's just what it is, So yeah, I just deep diving on that alone has been a game changer. It's literally my favorite form of divination now. It's like my pet project on the side for my own spiritual development, like exploring that and the different ways to look into it. It's fascinating. So yeah, I'm loving it a lot.
Yeah, I think I mean I've talked to so many folks for the podcast now and just writer friends, I know in general, and it's amazing to me how many times like you go down a rabbit hole for research and how much that can impact your practice, how much can impact your life, like, or shift the whole creative process you're in the middle of. And yeah, I mean, have you found other things in your research that have really kind of pushed what you're doing personally in your practice?
I think I'm respecting like energies and such more. Like before, I was very much like, oh, Reiki, it's a closed practice, I must stay away from that sort of thing. Versus now where I'm like, well, this is working for people for a reason, and that comes through, all the research I'm doing with the ancient Egyptians and like their version of like a soul, so like I thought it is fascinating, and it stopped me being so quick to close off a question. Like it must be maddening to be constantly finding things to be falling in love with. But divination is just that. It is such a wonderful way to love yourself with self-introspection, and it's such a fascinating subject. There's literally a divination method for anybody, like whether it, you're like energy wise or time, like you're limited with time as a resource, or you prefer utilizing like water as an element in your practice. And even if you work with deities, whereas I'm secular, I'm not going to dismiss people just because they work with their deities, their gods, their ancestors, their spirit guides. It's a personal thing, and it's completely unique to others. Earlier in my business, I actually wrote personalized divination rituals for folks. I had this mammoth questionnaire, and like when people came back to me, like I did all the fun research as well and looked over notes that were just, like I say, scattering all the desk drawers. I'm looking at my desk drawers now, and there's just stuff sticking out of them all the time because it's just filled with must remember this, and I have 2 phones and they're both equal amassed. So but yeah, just even like finding personal divination ritual like recommendations for folks, they're so different and so varied. Like it's just fascinating that we live in a time where we are so lucky to have the research available to us to look into things a lot more. I feel really lucky to be here at this time and have the privileges I do to be able to look into it. This is my full-time job. Like I don't work in events anymore. I don't, I work with witches. Like what a dream job, right? Like, like it's something that like 11-year-old me would be like incredibly amazed by. 16-year-old me would think I was making it up. Like, but it's true. Like we go through phases in our life, and the sense of community it's brought me is just been a game changer. So yeah, I love divination. Could you tell?
Yeah. And I think kind of what you're saying about, this interplay of science and what we know and what we don't know and all that. I always think of like the human tendency throughout history to have some form of divination, even, in people who don't particularly say that they're magical practitioners or believe in that sort of thing. We all do kind of have superstitions around it. And I think part of it is just like, we're wired as humans for pattern recognition. That's, to find faces in the brush, or, to figure out, the seasons and when to plant. And, I think all of those things are part of our evolution. And so divination to me seems like a natural outcropping of that, that hardwired pattern recognition.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. Like, I think it's called pareidolia. Pareidolia. I can't pronounce it. Like, this is how funny I am. Like, I love words, can't pronounce them. Like, I love artwork, can't paint it, can't draw it. Like, I'm having so much fun with my creativity outlets. But truly, like, I do genuinely believe that the universe has its own language, and divination is like the language interpreter, and it's up to you to choose the language. It's up to you, like, if you want to listen, if you want to spend time with that, if you want to utilize it, but it's always going to be there. So I would never like shame somebody for being like, I'm just focusing on all the logical stuff and deep diving with the psychology of it all. But also, it's just nice to be out in nature and, something really special, like a leaf falling down, and you just happen to look at that leaf, it's overturned, and there's like a beautiful heart on the back, like a heart pattern. You're like, you could have noticed any other leaf on that nature walk. You could have like not even looked at the leaves at all. You could have been on your phone texting, but you just happened to at that moment. There's got to be a point where like there is something more, right? Like, there's got to be something. So this is why I feel like divination is definitely a way to listen to messages in the universe and within ourselves. If we know we needed some time to get outside and feel grounded in that moment, and, seeing that heart, to some, it might mean that, love is coming your way, but it could just mean that like it's a recognition that, you know, the love you're showing yourself, the self-care you're showing yourself for getting outside and getting in the fresh air. It could just literally be like a smile in its own way from the universe. Yeah. So, yeah.
No, I like that. And I think, I know for me, as much as I am like, you know, I always joke, it's like as much woo as I think I have, I also am a hardcore skeptic at heart too. And like, I tend to veer toward, I like tarot a lot, but I tend to veer toward oracle cards because I like the simple imagery a little bit better. And, you know, when people have asked me, it's like, do you think you're, you know, connecting to spirit, or what do you, and I was like, you know, I guess I'm an agnostic in that just in way, because I'm just like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, you know, it could be just me having a conversation with my psyche, or it could be a message, but either way, like I find meaning in that, you know, laying out cards and looking at them. And even if it's just me figuring out what I actually think, it's still a useful tool.
You see, I think this is why we're talking to each other right now. Like, I'm such an advocate for like using tarot as a tool for self-care and like actually taking that time to connect with your intuition, whether that is with, like you say, your psyche, or with like another realm, or like deities or whomever. Like, it's very much like just the practice of taking that time out is going to be so beneficial for you, just to slow down and take note. So yeah, I love that. That's lovely.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I have known writers who've used tarot and other kind of divination methods, like to write themselves out of a corner or to figure out what happens next in a story when they're stuck. And I love the idea of, you know, creatives using divination tools in these ways. I mean, whether they're public about it or not, I love the idea of it.
Yeah, 100%. Like, tarot is great for it because it has structured meanings, but there are so many incredible independent artists out there who create these oracle decks specific to these sorts of causes and for these solutions. So, like, I'm a massive advocate for, like, please don't tell my partner I'm buying more decks, but but I am a massive advocate for supporting small business in this way. And if it helps you, you know, sometimes it's cheaper than a therapy session, so it can be just what you need, and sometimes it's like for the price of 2 coffees. You know, it's really, it's a joy. It really is. It's lovely.
I think I like what you said about supporting independent artists about it too. Like, I've really found like the last few decks I've purchased have been like either like a Etsy or Kickstarter projects, because I feel I love the passion behind them to do that much work to put a deck together and a book to go with it. And it's I don't know, I just find those a lot more interesting, I guess, than some of the big ones out there. I'm vibing really hard lately. I got the Southern Gothic Oracle, so Southern US for our non-US listeners, because I grew up in the South, and I love that the author and the artist for the deck has connected these things of my childhood to these, you know, bigger meanings in her divination deck. So yeah, it's an interesting way to approach things, definitely.
Do you find that you're connecting deeper with that deck because it resonates with you and your childhood and such? Do you mind me asking?
No, okay? I don't mind you asking at all. I'm always amused when you know, the tables turn during an interview, but I do think it does. Partly because I'm a little homesick. I moved across country, so I'm currently living in California, even though I grew up in Tennessee. And I think it, you know, it feeds that homesickness a little bit to have that imagery. Like the one I've been pulling like a card a day just to kind of get familiar with the deck. And my card yesterday was a mason jar. And the mason jar that she painted is like the old fashioned blue ones. I don't know if you've seen those in the UK.
No.
But I guess probably in the early 20th century, they were like a pale blue color. And she connected like the mason jar to like the sense of self-preservation, like of putting food, you know, like the intended use of putting food by for the winter to get through hard times, and like a connection to heritage and family and culture. And the thing that she didn't say, but that I thought about when I pulled the card, and why I like oracle cards, because I think you can, because there isn't a structure like with tarot, you can kind of pull in more your own meanings. And because she chose the blue one, the kind of antique blue mason jar, there's also this tradition in the South called Haint Blue that I think comes from like the Gullah Geechee people in the coastal South Carolina area, of painting your porch or the stoop ceiling of your house blue to scare off ghosts and haunts. So it's called Haint Blue. And it's like a pale sky blue color. That's kind of the color of the jar. So it's also this like protection element to it that I thought was kind of interesting.
That's so lovely. You're going to have to like link everybody to this deck now so we can all go in.
I'll put a link in the show notes because she's done a great job. And she has a new one that now is like Southern Botanicals. And I found that one first and then wound up buying them both. And she's now working on a tarot deck that I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to put on my list too. Maybe I could get her to come on the show. That'd be great.
Like, how good would that be? Like, yes, do it.
So, speaking of like promoting stuff and things like that, before we kind of get to our last couple questions, I just kind of wanted you to, one of the things I always like to ask people, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, is like, what do you really hope that people take away from your work, your writing, your business? Like what, you've spoken about this a little bit, but I just want to give you a chance to kind of expound on that. Like, what do you really hope what you're doing is putting out in the world, I guess?
So I hope that I am the kind of person who, when you think that the fire's, burning low and things are coming to a simmer and things are calming down a little bit, I hope that I'm that tiny bit of tinder, that tiny little bit of kindling that kickstarts things again and re-energizes you and gets you excited, whether that's in your spiritual practice or through your business. Like, whatever you take from me, I hope that it can motivate you to feel some kind of way about your business, and yourself. And I want you to be able to look at things through a little bit of a different lens, I guess. I want to share the joy with you about divination. I want to explore things with you. Like we love these kind of fifth house themes, don't we? Like inner child work, creativity, play, but it's literally that. Like, it's so important to have fun. Like sometimes it can be so serious with witchcraft and with divination. And it doesn't have to be like that all of the time. It's a big part of your life. Even when you're at work, you laugh sometimes, you joke around sometimes. Even when you're doing the school run or you're doing dishes, you'll put good music on and you'll start dancing in the kitchen, like you'll always be doing something and finding joy there. So I hope that from what I'm supplying, hopefully that can add to it for you. I'm not replacing anything. I'm not, putting something there. I just hope it kickstarts and continues for you, I guess.
Yeah, no, I love that. So our last question is a game of chance that I'm going to roll a die. But before that, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of tell people like what you've got coming up. This episode will air, I think, toward the end of November. So like kind of toward the end of the year. And, what you've got going on and where people can connect with you and your work.
Ooh, so you can find me at backyardbanshee.com. Sign up for the free newsletter because every month I send out a free tarot scope. So that's always nice. I also share like writing that I'm coming across that like I love and I love to promote, especially some of the writers that I now have with my website. I've got some incredible writers on there who want to share their point of views. So like I'm hoping that this will continue for them. And I'll just always be behind them, whatever they do. So backyardbanshee.com. You can find me on there. And in terms of what's coming up, I do have an A to Z of modern divination coming out at the end of this year. It's self-published. I'm not with any publishers yet. I'd be interested to see what people think of it. So let me know on all the usual socials channels.
Great. And we'll make sure links for all that and how to get the book and all that is in the show notes. So for our last question, like I said, a little game of chance. And I always joke that it is my Scorpio nature to want to ask people questions that we're not supposed to talk about in polite company, which is why I started a podcast. So depending on what I roll, you'll get a question about death, sex, religion, politics, or money. And if I roll a 6, you get to pick which one you want. So
Cool.
4, politics. The thing you said you didn't want to talk about, because we go on forever, we're going to talk about. So do you think that witches and magical practitioners have political obligations? And if they do, what are they?
Ooh, that is a very good question. Yes, I do think we have an obligation. I think we have the voice, the power to speak up, and I think we should, because, like I say, community is really important. You can be a solitary, like eclectic, secular witch, right? But everybody needs support, like whether it's in their witchcraft practice or not. And we can't do things alone. That is what I feel is like an obligation there. Like we just have to stand together. I think the gatekeeping that continues in the community, the cancel culture that is, very ripe. I think we have an obligation to stand firm in modern ethics of witchcraft. Like I am a big advocate for Alice Tarbuck and Claire Askew's collection of essays of modern witches, and it's called The Modern Craft. It's about witchcraft ethics. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful read, like 20 out of 10 recommend. I loved it. And in terms of like putting ourselves forward in the community, if we are comfortable, if we feel like we are in a safe space to do so, if we are securing ourselves enough to like be on councils, if we are happy enough to speak publicly about change you want to see, whether that's, turning a car park wasted space into like a wildflower garden. Like it doesn't have to be like go hard, heavy witchcraft that you share with your community, but making the world a little bit of a better place through your practice and like what you offer and your skills and talents and your power. Like, why would that be a bad thing? Like, why would you want to keep that within? The world right now really needs to hear your unique voice. It doesn't matter if other people are doing it. It doesn't matter. I told you I was going to get voicey about the politics.
No,
didn't I?
I will like polish the soapbox for you. So go for it.
But it doesn't matter that like other people have tried and have failed. Like I still think that you should step forward if you are comfortable enough to do so and support those, whether in private or, in public, support those who do. I think it's a big deal to be there for each other. We're not going to move forward as a species without each other and supporting each other and changing things quite dramatically in the future. So, I mean, just today in the UK, we've had a female prime minister appointed, and they basically stand against everything that I stand for. So it's really hard to explain these sorts of things to children when you have big feelings yourselves about it, like deep anger, and we just got to work towards a common goal. You will have to work with people you don't like sometimes, but we can change how we approach it. And I think that that's quite key. Like we have the power to step into it. So if we feel like we can, we should, basically.
I think what you said there about kind of the, what are you capable of and what are you doing? I do think that, like big political stuff, like, here in the US, like the presidential elections and things like that. And there for you all to, get basically another prime minister that you didn't get to vote for. That kind of makes us feel like we don't have agency in what's going on. But I think it also like robs us of remembering that we do have agency on the ground where we are and building community and building connections. And, what people think of as local small politics. Well, that's the stuff that touches your life every single day. That's like kind of, to use a very old cliche, it's where the rubber meets the road. And that's where you can affect change, in your day-to-day life with the people you encounter in your community every day. And I think, yeah, it's sometimes hard to remember in the scope of things, but it's important, and it's where we do have agency and power.
100%. Yeah. Like we're never like alone in this aspect. Like there are so many people out there who need community and need a space to talk about these things. And I have to, like, as much as everybody hates the internet, and as much as sometimes I hate the internet, you know, like I am so grateful for the people that I've had the pleasure of connecting with, yourself included. Like this, you know, this wouldn't normally be happening. And
right.
you know, whilst we may not feel like we have the strength to fight today, let's reserve our strength to fight for tomorrow, you know? I love a good cliche. Like I read tarot, of course I do. Like, you know, but I do think like try not to let the big media get you down. Like that's a massive takeaway, isn't it? Like the amount of news you read, don't let it numb you, and don't let it overwhelm you. So yeah, that's another key thing.
No,
like
it's a good takeaway from that. Lizzie, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so glad that we got to connect. I'm glad you reached out. And I will use this as an opportunity to tell other folks, you know, that you can reach out if you want to be on the show. We'd love to have you. And yeah, thank you. This has been great. And yeah, I am grateful for the internet, and then I get to connect with people near and far. That's a pretty awesome thing it does, despite the bad things.
Right. I know. Oh, thank you so much for having me. And thank you to everybody for listening to me rant for like, I don't know, 45 minutes now or more. But yeah, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
WitchLit is a production of 1000 Volt Press and is edited by Kaifel Agostini. Our music is Voices by Alexander Shenekar. You can support our work at ko-fi.com/witchlitpodcast. And if you'd like to submit your own death, sex, religion, politics, or money questions, or have questions or comments about the show, you can send an email to victoria@witchlitpod.com. And please be sure to let us know if we can use your name on the show. Transcripts and all our previous episodes are available at witchlitpod.com, and you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter @witchlitpod. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and consider giving us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps other witches find the show. Thanks for listening and for reading witchy.